A few years ago, I had the idea to look at the DCEU and see how it could fit into the structure of the Infinity Saga, which I feel is the gold standard for a cinematic universe. That video was really successful and prompted me to start an entire series of what I call universe restructuring videos. As of this video, the DCEU has officially ended, and all these years later, things have changed. The DCEU has expanded, so let's take this idea full circle. This time around, I'm going to be actually sticking a tiny bit closer to the DCEU, because at this point, the number of franchises in the DCU has actually exceeded that of the Infinity Saga. Despite there being less projects, the Infinity Saga consisted of 11 franchises, while the DCEU has 12, or 13 if you count the unreleased Batgirl, which I will. Some of these franchises can and maybe should be combined into one, and in doing so we are left with just 10. So I will have to create one extra franchise, but it will be born out of another. There's like a franchise within a franchise. You'll understand when we get there. The Infinity Saga was almost entirely perfectly cast, so I will not be acknowledging the awful castings of the DCU, which you will see in the posters, and while I'll be mostly sticking to the heroes and villains who actually appeared in the real DCEU, I will be adding characters whenever it feels like a natural progression for the universe. With that all out of the way, let's take the franchises of the DCEU and place them into the Infinity Saga structure. To see, honestly, a better version of the DCEU, make sure to subscribe and let's begin. Replacing the Infinity Saga is the Apokolips Saga, and to start things off, we have to decide what will be the equivalents to the 3 trilogies of the Infinity Saga. DC has a very obvious equivalent to Marvel's big 3 in the Trinity. The problem is that the DCEU Batman did not have any solo movies, while Superman only had one. Still, the Trinity absolutely needs to be the big 3 of the DCEU, and in order to accomplish that, while sticking to the franchises of the DCEU, I'll be considering Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice as a solo Batman movie, or at least an equivalent to one, which will serve as the basis for a Batman trilogy, while there will not be a Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice movie. The real DCEU began with Superman, but I think Batman fits Iron Man's role a lot better, so we'll be starting with the first DCEU movie, which is The Batman. For this trilogy, I've decided to stick to the Batman villains who appeared in the DCEU as the main villains, while sticking to villains who either appeared or were mentioned as side villains. This movie would be similar to the real-life movie that never happened, which would have focused on Deathstroke as the main villain, as he learns of Bruce's identity and makes it his own personal mission to dismantle every aspect of the Dark Knight's life. In that movie, it would have been because Batman either killed or was thought to have killed Slade's son, but that's a Teen Titans story, so it won't be exactly that, but it will be something along those lines. Along the way, Batman finds himself in Arkham Asylum, having to fend off a multitude of old enemies while dealing with the inner turmoil of having recently lost his own son, Jason Todd, whose death happened very recently. Batman will debut with a bit of a history like the DCEU. Dick Grayson is already Nightwing and is out in Bloodhaven, completely abandoning the Robin-based canon of the Snyderverse. Deathstroke could survive the movie, but he wouldn't return after this in the saga. Outside of the Trinity, just one more member of the Justice League will be getting a movie, and just one as an equivalent to the Hulk. The problem is that if you do include Batman, then 5 out of the 6 members of the Justice League got movies in the DCU. So, to fit the MCU structure, I'm going to be replacing one of the founding members with someone else who will not be getting their own movie, and the hero I chose to replace is Aquaman, because he had 2 movies, while the only other option, The Flash, only got 1, meaning it makes a lot more sense for The Flash to be the counterpart to the Incredible Hulk. As previously alluded to, Ezra Miller will not be in this universe at all. Instead, in this world without a Flash TV show, Grant Gustin will be the Flash of the DCEU. As an equivalent to the Hulk, it would make sense for him to be recast after this movie, but the other Flash actors would have either made this movie worse or were too old. So let's stick to Grant the entire time. In fact, let's stick to all the CW actors aside from Jai Courtney, because the rest are just better. The movie would tell Barry's origin story as a recently hired forensic scientist whose life is suddenly turned upside down after a bolt of lightning grants him superhuman speed. Becoming the Flash, Barry investigates the strange coincidence of his own mother being killed by a man with similar abilities years ago, while then also saving Central City from the Rogues. The Rogues are minor villains, while Reverse Flash is the main villain. While learning his abilities, Barry also enlists the help of Star Labs, more specifically Silas Stone, allowing for Victor Stone to appear in a cameo that is equivalent to Hawkeye's appearance in Thor. The Batman Part 2 expands the Bat family by introducing Tim Drake and Barbara Gordon, as well as Catwoman and Nightwing, who were already established prior to this movie, and have the expected past with Batman. The main villain of this movie is the Black Mask. In this movie, Black Mask's power over Gotham City grows. Tim Drake and Barbara Gordon decide to take matters into their own hands, forcing Batman to learn to trust allies again while facing off against Black Mask's top assassins, Deadshot, Anatoly Knizia, who is the Beast, because he has no association with the KGB, so he's not the KG Beast, and Killer Croc, who this time around is a CGI creature, and an end credit scene also shows the side villains being recruited by Amanda Waller. This movie leaves Batman off in the perfect place for him to become a member of a superhero team as he learns to trust his allies again. Wonder Woman will be very similar to the real movie. The big difference is the Godkiller sword, and the twist that it's Diana won't be included because I'd saved that for later, and while Ares will appear, he won't be the main villain as it's revealed that Ares is simply feeding off the conflict of the war, definitely not causing it. This revelation, in combination with Steve's death, leads Diana to not really finding a place in man's world, so she returns to Themyscira, but with a potential longing to return. Dr. Poison is the main villain, creating a drug that gives her equal strength to Diana, but dying from that same drug in the end. Finally, we arrive to the actual first DCEU movie, which I'd renamed to Superman the Man of Steel to fit the naming convention of the Captain America movies, and while the movie's cast and premise will be mostly the same, I'd definitely make some changes. For instance, Jonathan Kent teaches Clark to inspire and use his powers for good, dying not to prevent Clark from exposing himself, but rather when Clark was simply not around, Jonathan sacrificed his own life to save someone else's. Then, during the fight against General Zod, Superman's actions in fighting for humanity, even though he's an alien, trying to redirect the fight to unpopulated areas, and general hopeful demeanor inspired General Swanwick to reveal himself to be J'onn J'onzz, joining in on the fight in a role that is definitely comparable to Black Widow's role in Iron Man 2. I don't mind Superman killing General Zod, but it certainly has to be in a situation where it's very clear Superman had no other choice. This does take place in a world where other superheroes exist, but they don't appear. Wonder Woman is on Themyscira, the fight happens too quickly for the Bat family to show up, and the Flash would explain in Justice League that he was busy fighting a villain like Gorilla Grodd at the same time. Additionally, the damage and death toll would be far more minimal, and Superman then becomes a beacon of hope and the new face of superheroes on Earth, as opposed to what happened in Man of Steel. Justice League can take the general plot of the real Justice League movie, but with a few big changes. Notably, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice didn't happen, so the Trinity haven't met, Superman is very much alive from the beginning, and the other heroes don't ever fight him, or if they do, it's due to a misunderstanding. Furthermore, Diana is on Themyscira, but is prompted to return to man's world after it's attacked by Steppenwolf. The Flash is far more experienced and established, and not annoying, while Victor's accident happens on screen during the movie, and Aquaman is replaced by the Martian Manhunter, who's already revealed himself to the world and is allies with Superman. Alongside Aquaman, the entire kingdom of Atlantis and a few other characters don't appear. Steppenwolf has his Zack Snyder's Justice League design and motivation. Darkseid and his elite do appear in a similar moment to their appearance in the Speed of Force scene, which does happen in this movie similarly, and the movie has zero Nightmare timeline content. Those future events are not shown or prophesized for now. And after saving the world from the invasion, the Justice League become beloved heroes whose base of operations is the newly built Hall of Justice. The rest of the Bat family don't appear, like how War Machine didn't appear in the Avengers, and there could be a tie-in comic explaining what they were doing during these events. Phase 2 then begins with the final Batman movie, The Batman Part 3, which brings the trilogy full circle by introducing Jason Todd, who, having been mysteriously returned to life, takes up his killer's original moniker, becomes the Red Hood, and wages war against crime in Gotham City, while also having a vendetta against Batman for not killing the Joker and for replacing him so quickly. Clearly, this movie adapts Batman under the hood, but Black Mask's role is replaced by the Penguin, and Jason is slightly less set in his ways, eventually even turning to Batman's side in the third act, as the actual main villains are the Joker, not played by Jared Leto, and Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie. Seeing as this movie would have had an entire hour on Under the Red Hood, I think it would definitely fit the story. After Joker and Harley are defeated, Ra's al Ghul is revealed to have been the one who brought Jason back to life in an effort to cause strife in Batman's life. This is the final Batman movie in the saga, but Ra's will be the Batman counterpart of the Legion of Doom, so it's setting that up. It does seem crazy to not make any more Batman movies going forward, but it is just as crazy that they never made any more Iron Man movies following the $1 billion Iron Man 3. They created a $1 billion franchise and then just left it alone. One of a handful of real-world DCEU sequels, Wonder Woman 1984 will be almost entirely changed to a completely different sequel with a different name. The only thing I'm keeping is the cheetah appearing as a secondary main villain. Wonder Woman God Watch is set after Justice League and explores Diana reintegrating into society, yet again acting as a fish out of water, this time towards modern technology and society. Taking inspiration from the story it gets its name from, it features Veronica Kell in a large role as she makes a deal with the goddess Circe in order to save her daughter. Diana becomes involved through Barbara Minerva, an employee of Veronica's who she's become good friends with since the events of Justice League. As Diana interrupts this deal, Circe retaliates by turning Barbara into an Ani-Man, a combination between a human and an animal, which is basically Circe's whole shtick. So Barbara is turned into the cheetah. Circe remains the main villain, but Cheetah is like a side villain who's set up to return down the line as she will be a member of the Legion of Doom. Unlike in the real world, Superman will be getting a solo sequel, one that incorporates elements from across the real-life DCEU and beyond, in a movie called Superman Bulletproof. In this movie, Clark and Lois would get engaged, Jimmy Olsen would be introduced as a newly hired photographer at the Daily Planet, who quickly becomes one of Clark's closest friends, and who he reveals his identity to by the end of the movie. And also, the Flash would appear in a large role in the beginning of the movie as he and Superman hold a race for charity, which ends in a tie, although Flash mentions he let Superman catch up. The main villain is Lex Luthor, definitely not played by Jesse Eisenberg and bald. Luthor despises Superman and everything he stands for with a burning passion. Since Superman's debut a few years prior, Luthor has been investigating him, discovering remnants of Superman's home planet that fell to Earth alongside him, which we see in a flashback. He calls it kryptonite and deduces that it probably would hurt Superman, so Lex hires Robert Dubois to take Superman out, giving him an exoskeleton suit and equipping him with kryptonite. The movie then basically plays out the story told in the Suicide Squad for the reason why Bloodsport was arrested. He shoots Superman, who doesn't bother dodging because he thinks he's invincible. Superman is then shot by a kryptonite bullet and sent to the ICU, and although he does survive, he spends the rest of the movie facing his own mortality for the very first time, which is basically his arc. While Superman is recovering, Lois investigates Bloodsport and learns that he was hired by Lex Luthor, and he has a daughter who Luthor threatened. Lois's story leads her to convincing Bloodsport to put his faith in Superman and help him take Luthor down. Along the way, they also meet the next person Lex has hired and equipped with kryptonite, which would be John Corbin, aka Metallo. Eventually, after Clark has recovered, a final fight ensues between Superman and Lex in his exosuit, while Bloodsport fights Metallo, sacrificing his life to defeat him. I like Bloodsport quite a lot in the Suicide Squad, honestly more than I like Deadshot in Suicide Squad, but in this world, Deadshot will be sticking around in the future Suicide Squad movies, and the similarities between them would make it absolutely obsolete to keep Bloodsport around in that role. So I think his story should end here, but also play out here in a similar kind of way. So then Superman wins his fight with Luthor, while Lois unveils to the world Lex's criminal operation, sending him to prison. An end credit scene then shows Superman intercepting a pod falling to Earth, only to discover it contains a young woman. Suicide Squad will definitely be very different from the actual first Suicide Squad movie, the biggest thing being that while it's legitimately my favorite thing in the DCEU, Peacemaker doesn't really fit as its own separate franchise within this universe. So instead, I've decided to incorporate the characters and plot lines of the Peacemaker show into the Suicide Squad movies. For this first movie, that takes the form of Peacemaker appearing as a member of the Suicide Squad from the get-go, and the villains of the movie being the White Martians, inspired by the Butterflies, who take the form of a human superhero group called HyperClan. Johnny Connamos and Amelia Harcourt appear as Argus agents from the beginning. The Beast, or KG Beast, replaces Katana on the lineup, while other characters don't appear, and deaths are far more common. With the White Martians being the main villains, it would make sense for Batman's cameo to be given to the Martian Manhunter instead, although it is just a cameo. Phase 2 comes to a head with Justice League Legion of Doom, putting heavy focus on the newly established Supergirl, whose pod was followed to Earth by Brainiac, revealed to be partially responsible for Krypton's destruction, and Brainiac is the main villain of this movie. Motivated by the search for ultimate knowledge, Brainiac sets out to extract Earth's biggest city to shrink and add to his collection, before then destroying Earth so that no new knowledge can be created or discovered there. Calculating that the Justice League has an unacceptable 5% chance of defeating him, Brainiac Brainiac recruits several villains under false pretenses, creating the Legion of Doom. This movie's Justice League lineup includes the Founders, Supergirl, a newly recruited Ryan Choi aka the Atom, who takes over the mantle of the Atom from Ray Palmer, as well as Jon Stewart, who's come to Earth upon hearing of Brainiac's arrival. Jon was followed by Sinestro, who's recruited into the Legion of Doom, alongside a recently created clone of Superman, Bizarro, who was created by Lex Luthor, and at one point in the movie, like in the third act, Cyborg is hacked and taken over by Brainiac, temporarily turning him into the Grid, who's unlocked the full potential of Cyborg's abilities, making him far more powerful, but also temporarily evil. Brainiac manages to shrink Metropolis and add it to his collection, but is stopped from destroying the world when the Legion of Doom turns on him, finding out about the real reason for why they were recruited. Metropolis is returned to where it belongs, but with a lot of damage sustained, and after gaining control back, Cyborg accesses a part of his Mother Box abilities that show him a vision of the future, Superman turning against them, Themyscira destroyed, and the rest of the nightmare timeline we saw in the movies, although Batman definitely does not use a gun. Phase 2 then concludes with the epilogue in Aquaman. The only differences would be Aquaman not being a Justice League member, and the recent events of Justice League 2 are mentioned and referenced. Ant-Man had a Falcon appearance, but I don't really think any Justice Leaguers or Bat Family members really fit into this story, so we'll be skipping that. Everything else is the same as the real-world Aquaman movie, aside from, I guess, the casting of Mera. Phase 3 essentially starts with a Captain America movie that doubles as an Avengers movie, one that includes more heroes than the original Avengers movie, so the same will be true for the third and final Superman movie, which I'm calling Superman Warworld. Inspired by the relatively recent Superman The Warworld saga, the only Justice Leaguer who doesn't appear is Wonder Woman, who went off to Themyscira. The movie follows the Justice League, which has actually recently recruited many members of the Bat Family as well, having recently defeated Amazo in Metropolis, as they, alongside nearby bystanders like Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, are forcibly beamed up to Warworld. They're subsequently coerced via threat to those bystanders into becoming champions of Warworld and fight other champions, including the recently captured exiled Thanagarian police officer Shayara Hall, and later joined by Jon's backup, Hal Jordan. Eventually, a Batman vs Superman fight ensues, Batman making a makeshift armor suit and using his contingency plans on Superman, but faking his death like he did in The Dark Knight Returns to avoid any death. As for Superman, throughout the movie, he attempts to get the people of Warworld to rise up against Mongul, but finds that they've been brainwashed into thinking of Mongul as a god. Eventually, Superman does manage to turn those people of Warworld to revolt. The revolt is stopped, however, as Mongul challenges Superman to a one-on-one fight for the soul of Warworld and for the freedom of Warworld. The fight is essentially an adaptation of the classic Doomsday fight, a lot later in the saga this time around than it was in the actual DCEU. The two are evenly matched, and the fight ends in one killing final blow from both sides as the League, the Bat Family, Jimmy, Lois, and the people of Warworld watch. After Superman's death, the people of Warworld are completely liberated. The Justice League return Superman's body to Earth and hold a funeral which millions attend. Hawkgirl joins the League to Earth and then joins the team. Upon questioning, Batman revealed his contingency plans to the League, who vote him off because of it, although it did come down to a very close vote. This leaves the Justice League without the Trinity and without clear leadership as a substitute for the Avengers breaking up. And I want to do the exact same thing, so Superman is dead, Batman was kicked off, and Wonder Woman is gone. So the Justice League is around, but without the Trinity. Movie 2 of Phase 3 is the one and only time I'm creating a new franchise, unless you don't count BVS for Batman. This was necessary because after combining the franchises that could have and or should have been combined, we are left with one less franchise than needed. Thankfully, one of those franchises, Black Adam, has yet another franchise within it with characters that don't really belong anywhere else. Initially, this was going to be a JSA movie, but that would have made too many teams in this saga, too many team movies, and as a counterpart to Doctor Strange, Dr. Fate fits very well. The movie would chronicle Dr. Fate's obscure origin, starting as a 12-year-old boy in the early 20th century whose father received prophecies of an ancient valley in ancient Mesopotamia that led to his father's death and him being bestowed the Helmet of Fate, chosen as Nabu's vessel in the battle against the Lords of Chaos. Now aging slightly slower than usual, he and a few other heroes formed the Justice Society of America during World War II, but were forced out of the public eye after the war ended and turned into wartime myths. Flash forward to the present day, most of the JSA have passed away, and Dr. Fate finds his age catching up to him as he's overwhelmed by a dark sorcerer named Mordru. Maybe influenced by a bit of nostalgia, Fate recruits some JSA adjacent heroes to help, including the reincarnated Hawkman, as well as Atom Smasher and Cyclone, who inherited their grandparents' generation-skipping abilities. Unlike in Black Adam, Dr. Fate is the main character and most powerful hero, rarely takes off his helmet. It's as rare as Din Djarin in The Mandalorian, so like 2 times in the movie, and he absolutely does not die. As for the other JSA members, some are mentioned to be still alive, holding on in their old age, like Jake Garrick, Alan Scott, and Ted Grant, but they don't appear in the present day within this saga. Suicide Squad Volume 2 will stick very closely to the plot of the Suicide Squad, but with some minor changes. Bloodsport's role is entirely replaced by Deadshot. Peacemaker's redemption from his show is instead shown here. Vigilante appears as a major character and member of the Suicide Squad, with all of the same characteristics, and after the redeemed Peacemaker fails to do so, it's Vigilante who kills Rick Flag. The bullet versus bullet scene is between Vigilante and Peacemaker instead of Peacemaker and Bloodsport, and Vigilante is shot, but as it turns out, he actually has healing powers, so he's fine. All the deaths from the original occur here, but in the opening massacre, I'd replace Mongal, who doesn't appear because she would appear in Superman Warworld, with Judo Master, who's given a smaller role this time around compared to the real DCEU. Like Aquaman, the Shazam movie would be pretty much exactly the same, at least in plot. I would change Billy and Shazam to act more similarly, make Shazam feel more powerful, and just up the budget to improve the action and cinematography. Also, Superman does not appear since he's dead. Instead, a few Justice League members appear in the end to formally invite Shazam to join the Justice League, basically taking the end credit scene of Shazam Fury of the Gods, replacing Amelia Harcourt and Johnny Economos with a few Justice Leaguers, and placing that here. The Wonder Woman trilogy is capped off with Wonder Woman Paradise Lost. We start off right after the events of Justice League 2, as Diana returns to Themyscira only to discover she was too late to save her home from the wrath of her half-brother Ares, who's grown incredibly powerful in the last 100 years because of the 2 world wars and all the recent alien invasions and super conflict that the world has endured. Diana is taken captive by Ares, but manages to escape alongside a ragtag group of other surviving Amazons, including Artemis and Donna Troy, all of whom head to Hades to retrieve the fabled God-Killer sword to kill Ares. The group of Amazons then spend a good, year trekking through Hades while being pursued by Ares' forces, and taking a similar plot point to what I removed from the first Wonder Woman movie, while connecting it to the plot of the saga, Diana learns that the God-Killer sword isn't in fact a sword, but rather a person named Grail, who unbeknownst to her is the daughter of Darkseid. Eventually, Diana kills Ares in a final fight and liberates Themyscira from his iron fist, but not before Hippolyta's death at his hands. Diana remains on Themyscira for the time being to help rebuild as she's crowned the new queen. By the end of the movie, we'd be around the events of Dr. Fate timeline-wise, but a Grail-focused end credit scene takes place immediately before the Infinity War equivalent. Hulk had a large role in Thor Ragnarok, and Doctor Strange cameoed, but considering the plot I came up with here, no other heroes really fit at all. As a standalone movie, Black Panther coming out this late in the saga doesn't really leave much room for picking from the DCEU. The only 2 remaining franchises are Birds of Prey and Blue Beetle, and I really don't think it'd make sense for Birds of Prey to be in between the 2 Justice League movies, so we're putting that here, but with a bit of a twist. Harley Quinn is not involved at all. Instead, the protagonist will be Batgirl, and in fact this is a Batgirl movie first, a Birds of Prey movie second, a movie called Batgirl Birds of Prey. The other Birds of Prey members are Black Canary, Huntress, and moving over from Suicide Squad is Katana, and the main villain is Lady Shiva, through which we also meet her daughter Cassandra Cain, played by a different actress, who the heroines help liberate from her mother, calling herself Orphan after her mother's death. Firefly and Killer Moth also appear in minor roles, while the rest of the Bat family have a cameo. The one and only change I'd be making to the actual structure of the saga is in switching the release dates to the equivalents of Infinity War and Ant-Man and the Wasp, because honestly, Ant-Man and the Wasp never had any business coming out between the 2 Avengers movies. So the next movie is the sequel to Aquaman, which will be similar to Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, but without any of the Lost Kingdom elements. Aquaman and the Relics of Atlantis features Black Manta as the main villain, becoming a far bigger threat by finding the lost scepter of Atlan after years of searching for a way to exact exact revenge against Aquaman. An even bigger change is in the revelation that Black Manta fathered a son during his pirate days with a woman who claimed to be named Lucia Hyde, but her real name is actually Shalena, and unbeknownst to him, she was from the underwater kingdom of Zebel. The son, Calderon, becomes Aqualad and assists Aquaman in his fight with Black Manta. The title refers to 7 relics from Atlantis' past, each granting their user great power. The important ones are Atlan's Trident, which is used by Aquaman, the Scepter of Ro, used by Manta, and the Black Pearl, used by Calderon, which gives Calder his enhanced hydrokinesis powers. There are 4 more relics, but those are less important. Orm's role is much smaller, appearing only really in a few scenes, giving Arthur advice on how to do his kingly duties, which is a role that Arthur takes far more seriously than he did in the Lost Kingdom. Arthur Jr. doesn't appear, he doesn't exist yet, but Arthur and Mera do get married at the end of this movie. And so, the big culmination of the saga is Justice League Apokolips War, and includes every superhero and Suicide Squad member who appeared in the universe up until this point, while also introducing Green Arrow as a member of the Justice League. Just because we have Black Canary, so we might as well also include Green Arrow. This movie is all about Darkseid and the forces of Apokolips, including introducing Calabac and the Female Furies, coming to Earth to wage war against the Justice League in search of the anti-life equation. Beyond the Female Furies and one of its members, Big Barda, I would have liked to include the new Genesis gods, but there would have just been too many characters to add, so they'd be kind of the equivalent to the Eternals in the MCU. As in the comics, Thanos is connected to the Eternals, but the Eternals did not appear in the Infinity Saga only after. Wonder Woman is brought back to man's world yet again through Grail, who she learns is Darkseid's daughter. Darkseid deliberately put her into the world of the Amazons in order to dismantle that part of Earth's defense. Diana manages to kill Grail, but not before Grail kills every remaining Amazon aside from Diana. The Justice League mostly fights separately from the Suicide Squad, Bat Family, JSA, and Birds of Prey, who do attempt to fight together. There are a few minor deaths, but the big death of the movie is Cyborg, who is revealed to be the containment for the anti-life equation, which Darkseid rips out of him. Like Vision's death in Infinity War, Darkseid uses the anti-life equation to enslave the entire universe. The only characters who make it out are a handful of heroes, who Dr. Fate managed to teleport to the Tower of Fate, where they're protected by the Tower's magic. Dr. Fate, like Doctor Strange in Infinity War, saved these particular heroes because he saw millions of visions of the future and saw which heroes were necessary to save the world. In the end, Darkseid also resurrects Superman, the only real big superhero who doesn't really appear much in this movie. Superman turns to Darkseid's side and is enslaved by the anti-life equation, becoming Darkseid's top lieutenant. And thus, the DCEU becomes the nightmare timeline that was prophesized back in the second Justice League movie. Before the follow-up to that, between the two finales, is Blue Beetle, introducing a hugely powerful hero who will go on to be important in the Endgame equivalent. This movie will be similar to the real-world movie, but with some big changes to make it less generic. Victoria and Jenny Cord don't exist, and Jaime's family has a much smaller role and not much focus, while Jaime's friends, Brenda and Paco, do appear in decently sized roles. The same is true for Ted Cord, who is shown in action and in costume near the beginning in a few scenes that lead directly into Jaime accidentally getting the scarab after Ted's apparent death at the hands of Carapax. In the third act, however, Jaime finds Ted alive, and the two Beetles team up to take Carapax and his OMAC drones down. After they win, Ted Cord retires to become kind of Jaime's guy in the chair, officially passing the mantle over to Jaime. Blue Beetle takes place immediately before Apokolips War, and in an end credit scene, Jaime is seen taken over by the anti-life equation and by Darkseid. And finally, we have Justice League Final Crisis, the first hour of which takes place in the nightmare future, starting with Darkseid using the enslaved Morndru to find the Tower of Fate. Dr. Fate holds Darkseid off long enough for the other heroes to escape, but dies in the process. The heroes are desperate and on the run from Darkseid, and his top mind-controlled lieutenants, the most powerful heroes that he has control of, Superman, Blue Beetle, and Shazam. While some of the heroes still have hope, Batman has realized that they need to change the past and tries to get Flash to time travel like he did when they defeated Steppenwolf. Flash, however, is unable to do so, having not yet mastered that power or even learned how to do it. The mission then becomes to build a cosmic treadmill in order to aid Flash in time traveling. Every hero fights to their last breath against Darkseid's forces, while Flash puts the finishing touches on the treadmill and manages to disappear into the Speed Force just before he's caught by Superman. Now in the past, Flash's main goal is to return to Warworld before Superman's death to prevent it from happening, doing so without without even anyone noticing he's there. Everything changes from there. With Superman being around, he vouches for Batman to remain in the League, turning the vote in Batman's favor. Flash warns the Justice League of the upcoming invasion, so they solidify their forces, creating a Justice League Unlimited type situation with all the heroes of Earth joining in, while the anti-life equation is removed from Cyborg and put into a more secure place. In the current timeline, things went slightly differently after Superman Warworld, which led to that version of Barry getting a sidekick, another speedster named Wally West, aka Kid Flash. With the League united, Darkseid's assault on Earth goes very differently. Superman's mere presence proves to be absolutely priceless, as his leadership of the Justice League creates a much more efficient unit, one that inspires the militaries of the world to put their differences aside to stop this invasion. Cyborg and the other deaths from Apokolips War don't occur, and the conflict now lasts long enough for the entire Green Lantern Corps to show up on time. The first big death this time around is one of the Shazam family members, after which the rest kind of give up their powers or maybe lose their powers, transferring it to just Billy and Mary, who are the only remaining champions of Shazam. Flash had one other mission. Back in the Nightmare timeline, the League used Apocalyptian tech in combination with Blue Beetle Scarab and Speed Force energy to create a Darkseid killing bullet. The Batman of this new timeline uses the bullet on Darkseid, killing him using the contingency plan he had for Superman, alongside a plan that the Batman of the Nightmare timeline gave Barry to give to the Batman of the past. Unfortunately, Darkseid hit Batman with an Omega Beam at the same time, killing him, and he also did manage to get to the anti-life equation just before being killed, so one of Darkseid's elite then picks up the slack. However, the two Barry Allens then put together their power to destroy the anti-life equation for good, merging together and then dying in the process. Wally West takes over the mantle of the Flash, so Batman and the Flash are the two big deaths of this movie. And while Wally is the one and only and clear successor to the mantle of the Flash, the Batman mantle is a bit more complicated, and it's maybe set up to be fought over between Dick, Jason, and Tim in Phase 4. The universe is saved from Darkseid, and the Justice League remains united. The timeline-changing time travel rules does mean that this saga doesn't have a world-changing blip-like event, but in hindsight, that's not really something that helped the universe of the MCU going forward, so this timeline prevention plot would be similarly effective. The Apokolips saga then ends with an epilogue called Shazam and the Wrath of Black Adam. At this point, and for the foreseeable future, only Billy and Mary have powers, and this movie focuses on Black Adam being awakened after 5,000 years laying dormant and waging war against the champions of Shazam, having sworn vengeance against his captor. The movie ends with Black Adam retreating to Kahndaq, where he begins to rule alongside Adriana Tomaz. So that brings us to the end of this saga, but the Infinity Saga had a lot of TV shows coinciding with it, and some of them have recently been confirmed to be canon, so I'll just quickly go over what their counterparts would be, starting with the Netflix shows. The best counterpart for the Defenders, in my opinion, is the Outsiders, but just like how the MCU Defenders had almost nothing in common with the comic book Defenders, the same will be true with the Outsiders. The counterpart for Daredevil is Constantine, the counterpart for Jessica Jones is Vixen, the counterpart for Luke Cage is Black Lightning, the counterpart for Iron Fist is Firestorm, the counterpart for Defenders is Outsiders, and the counterpart for Punisher, a spin-off of Constantine, is Swamp Thing. I chose specifically characters who are pretty much exclusive to TV in the real world. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is replaced by Agents of Argus. Agent Carter is replaced by Krypton, a prequel to Superman the Man of Steel. Cloak and Dagger is Hawk and Dove. Runaways is Doom Patrol. Inhumans is Creature Commandos. And Hellstrom is Lucifer. This video is a follow-up to a video titled Making the DCEU a Complete Cinematic Universe with the Structure of the MCU, where I took the structure of the Infinity Saga and replaced it with a DCEU version. In this video, I'll be doing the same, but with the Multiverse Saga, but there are some stipulations. Since the saga is a lot bigger, a lot messier, and is incomplete, I'll be making more changes, specifically by bringing down the number of franchises by making certain movies or seasons into sequels or season 2, before then also completing the saga. However, I won't be going into nearly as much detail in most projects because there are just far too many. There is a lot to cover. I'm expecting this video to be very long, so let's not waste any more time. Make sure to like and subscribe, help me get to 100k, and let's begin. This saga will remain with the same title, the Multiverse Saga, and will begin with Phase 4, starting with the counterpart to WandaVision, which will be a series called Hawkworld, which is a mini-series that focuses on Currer Hall aka Hawkman and Shiera Hall aka Hawkgirl, who met during the events of Final Crisis, and now they learn about their shared history, both being reincarnations of ancient Thanagarians who visited Egypt, leading to them both being swept up in the goings goings-on of Thanagar, including the ongoing war with Ran. Joined by Adam Strange, the Hawks find out about Thanagar's ruthless conquering streak and set out to exact a plan to help Ran with their war. Along the way, Carter and Shayera meet General Haro Talak, who they soon learn is a third in their reincarnation cycle, a cycle that will only end if one of them kills another one, which is how the season will end, with either Hawkman or Hawkgirl or both together killing Haro and breaking the reincarnation cycle, and then also they return to Earth while Thanagar ends their conquering streak and their war with Ran. Supergirl is a mini-series as well, which will tell the story of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which wouldn't have come out yet at this point, but in this world, the story would simply be original for TV. In this series, still struggling to feel at home in the alien planet that is Earth, Kara visits a red sun planet to get drunk, only to get entangled in a girl's mission to avenge the death of her father at the hands of a man named Krem of the Yellow Hills. Taking her on a mission across the cosmos in search of Krem, Supergirl and the girl, whose name is Ruthie, are shaked to their very core along the way. Krem eventually joins the World Killers, who in this version have male members, and Rain is the main villain. The series ends in the same way as the comic, and Kara returns to Earth. The first multiple season series in the main DCEU is The Flash, the Fastest Man Alive. Season 1 focuses on Wally West taking up the mantle of the Flash, which he did in Justice League Final Crisis, based primarily on the original Wally West run leading up to the return of Barry Allen. In this season, Wally meets and begins to date Linda Park, struggles with keeping up with Barry's responsibilities and rogues due to his lower speed, only to then also be undermined by Barry's return, soon revealed to actually be Eobard Thawne in disguise. Wally breaks through a mental block to run faster than Barry ever did, defeating Thawne in the process. This is a counterpart to Loki, but it will be getting more than 2 seasons. The first movie in the Multiverse Saga, as a counterpart to Black Widow, won't take place during the Apokolips Saga and won't be about one of the founding members of the DCEU Justice League. Instead, it'll be a movie from a franchise that should have existed during the Apokolips Saga about a founder from the comics, Green Lantern. Green Lantern Corps will be the first of a trilogy. This movie focuses on Hal Jordan, John Stewart, and the newly recruited Guy Gardner, as the Green Lantern Corps are attacked by Atrocitus and his Red Lantern Corps, who are hell-bent on destroying the Guardians and everything they stand for, in an act of vengeance for the Manhunter's destruction of Sector 666 billions of years ago, while Atrocitus himself has an ulterior motive in fulfilling an ancient prophecy known as the Blackest Night. The Green Lanterns win with minimal casualties, but the seeds have now been planted for far greater conflicts in the Green Lantern Corps trilogy. As a counterpart to What If, we have Elseworlds Season 1, an animated series consisting of 10 episodes, with each episode focusing on a different universe, narrated by the Monitor, who goes from universe to universe in search of potential recruits to a team he's putting together to fight what he sees as a coming crisis. I tried to make each episode kind of a counterpart to the What If episodes, while sticking mostly to actual universes from the comics. Episode 1 is Earth 23, entitled President Superman. Episode 2 is Earth 37, entitled Thrill Killer, a world where Bruce became Batman in the 60s, although the episode actually focuses on the Batgirl of that world. Episode 3 is Earth 11, entitled Justice Guild of America, a gender-bent Justice League with Aquawoman as the main character. Episode 4 is Earth 82, entitled Dr. Chaos, a world where Kent Nelson became an agent of the Lords of Chaos instead of the Lords of Order. Episode 5 is Earth 55, entitled Deceased. Episode 6 is Earth 19, titled Gotham by Gaslight. Episode 7 is Earth 24, titled Bombshells, and focuses on Wonder Woman during World War II. Episode 8 is Earth 111, entitled The New Order, a world where Nightwing becomes the leader of an anti-metahuman police force. Episode 9 is part 1 in a 2-part finale, taking place initially on Earth 15, entitled Brainiac 10, showcasing a world where Brainiac advanced to a higher stage of consciousness and uses the power upgrade to defeat and kill the Justice League. Now calling himself Telos, he successfully takes over the entire universe and now seeks more. Telos becomes aware of the multiverse, causing the Monitor to rush to put together the Justice Incarnate he's been preparing. Episode 10 is titled Convergence, and focuses on the newly founded Justice Incarnate facing off against and defeating Telos. Instead of being a new franchise, Shang-Chi's counterpart will be continuing the Batman franchise, like how Shang-Chi kind of continued Iron Man 3 using the Mandarin. However, it is kind of a new franchise, as instead of Bruce Wayne being the main character, it will be, well, the first movie is titled Batman Battle for the Cowl, and focuses on Nightwing, Red Hood, and Robin disagreeing over who should take over the mantle of Batman, only to then be met by 2 more competitors, brothers, Azrael and Damian Wayne, both champions of their respective organizations/cults, yearning for the title of the Batman. Damian is 13 years old, conceived a bit before the events of the first Batman movie, and is being manipulated by his mother, Talia al Ghul, who has become leader of the League of Assassins after Raish's death, which I'm retconning to have happened in Justice League Legion of Doom. Just make believe I said that happened in that movie in the first video. Along the way though, Damian learns of his father's heroism and the Bat family's ways, and comes to find himself drawn to them, and so abandons his mother and his quest to become the Batman. At one point, Tim defeats Azrael in single combat, following which Azrael gives up his goal to become the next Batman as well. When Talia al Ghul unleashes an army of man-bats on Gotham, the Bat family finally comes to a decision, deciding that Tim Drake should pass over the mantle of Robin to Damian, and Tim should be the new Batman, donning a new suit based on Batman Beyond like he did at one point in the comics, and the expanded Bat family defeat the Man-Bats and Talia al Ghul. There will be one more Batman movie, but Tim Drake won't be getting an entire trilogy just because there honestly just wasn't room. New Gods focuses on Scott Free and Big Barda taking the opportunity that Darkseid's death presented them to escape Apokolips and head to New Genesis, unknowingly breaking the millennium-long peace treaty between Apokolips and New Genesis. Discovering he's the son of Highfather, Mr. Miracle finds himself entangled in the political complexities of the Fourth Wall, as an all-out war threatens to break out. New Gods will end with a small conflict breaking out and a war beginning. This is the start of a trilogy that is completely standalone and doesn't connect to anything else until the end of the saga after the trilogy has ended. The second multiple season TV show, kind of inspired by the Arrowverse, is Green Arrow, focusing on Green Arrow and Black Canary having hit it off during the Darkseid invasion, and now they find themselves drawn to each other as Oliver's legacy is attacked by another Archer calling himself Merlin, who is the main villain. Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, is introduced here as well. This jam-packed year comes to an end with the third and final Shazam movie, titled Shazam and the Monster Society of Evil, focusing on a series of magical events intertwining Shazam, Black Adam, and Dr. Fate that creates a crack in the multiverse, bringing in the greatest supervillain of Earth 5, Mr. Mind. And since this is a counterpart to Spider-Man, let's say there was a Captain Marvel trilogy before the DCEU, now revealed to be Earth 5, so the Captain Marvel of Earth 5 appears here, crossing over with Shazam of the DCEU to help defeat Mr. Mind. While there is a counterpart to the Spider-Man Raimi trilogy in, I guess, a Captain Marvel trilogy, Shazam definitely was not big enough to have a second reboot before the DCEU, and so there were 2 Shazams in this movie as opposed to 3 like Spider-Man. Speaking of Spider-Man, it seems very likely that there will be a Spider-Man 4, however, there will not be a Shazam 4. This is the final Shazam movie, because honestly, I don't think there's room for another Shazam movie. It's too many Shazam movies. He's not Spider-Man, so at this point, I think their connection has ended. Having been missing from the Apokolips saga, the DCEU will now finally be introducing the Titans with not a movie, but a TV show. In this series, Tamaranian Princess Coriander crash lands to Earth, which brings together 5 separate heroes from vastly separate backgrounds, forming the Titans. The team get off to a rough start as they learn that one of their members, Grant Wilson, aka Ravager, gets his powers from a drug from which he overdoses and dies. Then Grant's father, Slade Wilson, seeks revenge against the Titans, returning after not having appeared since the very first movie in the DCEU. In order to become a threat for the Titans though, Slade powers himself up using his other son Jericho to do so. This ironically also leads to Jericho's death. Ravager is introduced here as well, initially working for Slade. Rose ends up joining the Titans. Cyborg also forms a closer bond to the Titans than he ever did with the League, so he remains with them. Also because the Justice League have been pretty scattered since Final Crisis, so at this point, the Titans are kind of the biggest team in this universe. Dr. Fate, Wonders of the World is the first movie that actually goes to another universe. Khalid Nassauer, the Dr. Fate of Earth 2, reaches out to the Dr. Fate of Earth 1 and his team, which now also includes Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific, to seek assistance in dealing with the interdimensional threat that is Gog. This movie will establish that Earth 2, whose team is not the Justice League, but rather the Wonders of the World, had an Apokolips invasion of their own recently, and in it, their entire trinity died, who are the 3 main heroes of their world. So now, there aren't enough heroes left to fight their new interdimensional threat, which is Gog. The only members left of this team, which are the Wonders of the World, are Val Zod, aka Superman, Jay Garrick, aka The Flash, Alan Scott, aka Green Lantern, Khalid Nassauer, aka Dr. Fate, Thomas Wayne, who recently took over the role of Batman from his son, as well as Lois Lane, who is the Red Tornado of Earth 2. Along the way, it's also revealed that each member of the Trinity had a child. Superman's daughter is Kara and becomes Power Girl, Batman's daughter is Helena Wayne and becomes the Huntress, and Wonder Woman's daughter is Lyta Trevor and becomes Fury. But in the end, the heroes defeat Gog, and the heroes of Earth-1 return to Earth-1, but with now a kind of small relationship brewing between Earth-1 and Earth-2. So down the line, if they ever interact again, they will know each other. As a counterpart to Miss Marvel, I feel like there could kind of be a mini trilogy here with the counterparts to Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and the Marvels. So the counterpart to Miss Marvel is Booster Gold, and will be considered part 2 in a Blue Beetle and Booster Gold trilogy, focusing on Booster Gold's origin as a disgraced former football star. Mike Carter steals a time machine and becomes a hero in the present day using basic future technology, while along the way meeting and becoming best friends with Ted Kord. Booster's father, Supernova, is the main villain. Wonder Woman Odyssey is the 4th and final Wonder Woman movie and sees Diana learning her true origin of being created from clay, and that Zeus's true half-Amazonian daughter is Cassandra Sandsmark, who soon becomes the new Wonder Girl, as they, along with Donna Troy, deal with the threats that are Dr. Psycho and Giganta, the main villains. There will probably be a Thor 5, and it will probably be completely different from Thor 4, hopefully, but this world will not have a Wonder Woman 5. Phase 4 had a series called I Am Groot, and I think a worthy counterpart from the Suicide Squad franchise, which is the counterpart to the Guardians of the Galaxy, would be King Shark as a Shark, showing the adventures of Nanaue prior to the events of Suicide Squad Volume 2. But like I Am Groot, it's mostly just for fun and is largely inconsequential. The Flash, the Fastest Man Alive Season 2 is all about Wally having fully embraced the role of the Flash, and then developing an archenemy of his own, when a cosmic treadmill explosion turns crippled former police officer Hunter Zolomon into the time-manipulating speedster villain, Zoom, and then he also fights a few more rogues as well. At this point, the DCEU experimented with special presentations, making only 2 before abandoning the idea. The first of the 2, releasing on Halloween, is Dead Man, focusing on Boston Brand dying, becoming a ghost, and attempting to find the man who killed him, a man named Roy Mattson, aka The Hook. Along the way on this quest, he meets Jason Blood, although we don't quite see Etrigan yet. So just make believe that in the last video I mentioned that Barbara Gordon was actually paralyzed by one of Darkseid's elite in Final Crisis. And we have the sequel to Batgirl, Batgirl Sins of the Father, which sees Barbara becoming Oracle while Cassandra Cain takes over the role of Batgirl, inspired by the fact that T'Challa died in Black Panther Wakanda Forever and was replaced by Shuri. The movie would have a heavy focus on fathers, so you have Barbara's father James Gordon, then you have Cassandra's father David Cain, who returns to the fray, and then parallel to this, Stephanie Brown is introduced, getting away from her own supervillain father, the Clue Master. There's no official Black Panther 3, although it is likely, and there wasn't any room for a Batgirl 3 either, so this franchise will cap out at 2, which I think is fine, given that it's not completely removed from every other franchise. It is another Bat Family franchise, and they've been prevalent enough and will continue to be so. The second and final special presentation is Suicide Squad, the Peacemaker and Vigilante Special, which focuses on Peacemaker and Vigilante being sent on a mission together by Amanda Waller, where they're forced to put their differences aside. Along the way, the character-developed Peacemaker manages to force character development on Vigilante, while they face off against the Homeless Avenger and Peace Wrecker, 2 criminals inspired by themselves. Starting off Phase 5 is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which will be the final Aquaman movie, focusing on the Lost Kingdom of Necreus being uncovered, bringing out the Curse of Kordax, and forcing Aquaman to bring together a team of powerful Atlanteans, including Mera Calderam Orm, and introducing Garth, aka Tempest, in an attempt to save the world, all while struggling with keeping up his duties as king, superhero, and father, as it's revealed that Arthur Curry Jr. was born between movies. In the end though, Arthur retires from the role of Aquaman, passing the mantle to Calderam, and leaving the DCEU for good to completely focus on being the king of Atlantis and the father to his son. Titans Season 2 will see Donna Troy and Arsenal join the team, maybe also Wally West could have a cameo. All of these characters could have been revealed to have teamed up with Nightwing in the past. Roy, however, proves to be a poor fit for this team, so he leaves in the end. The season would follow Starfire being followed to Earth by her sister Blackfire. At some point, the Titans also go to Tamaran, but eventually they obviously defeat Blackfire and manage to have Corey stay on Earth, but not without Ravager serving as the season's big death. The Suicide Squad franchise comes to an end with Suicide Squad Volume 3. In their final mission, before being finally granted their freedom, the OG members of Task Force X, joined by a few more recruits, face off against Peacemaker's father, known to his neo-Nazi followers as the White Dragon. This is the final Suicide Squad movie. At the end, Amanda Waller is arrested for her immoral and illegal operation, which was revealed to the public by the original members of the Suicide Squad, and Task Force X, just as a concept, is brought to an end. Nobody dies, the original members go free, while the new recruits go back to prison. An epilogue of sorts to the Suicide Squad franchise, King Shark is a Shark Season 2 is the final season of the show and shows the further adventures of Nanaue before the events of Suicide Squad Volume 2. Still focusing on a younger Nanaue, the series does have one episode, Just Like I Am Groot, that takes place in the present day, or rather, it's Just Like I Am Groot in the fact that it will feature the counterpart to The Watcher, which is the Monitor. In this episode, Marnavu monitors King Shark for a bit to see if he's worth recruiting, ultimately concluding that he isn't. This is the end of the Suicide Squad franchise. The Flash, the Fastest Man Alive Season 3, introduces Bart Allen as he returns to the present day to save Wally from being killed by a fellow time traveler, Abracadabra, bringing up the question how it's possible that Bart Allen exists considering his father doesn't exist and his grandfather has been dead for years. The answer isn't revealed for a little while Impulse is now stuck in this time. At the end of the season, Wally and Linda get engaged after learning that Linda is pregnant. The culmination of the Blue Beetle and Booster Gold trilogy is a movie called Blue and Gold, introducing Booster Gold to Jaime Reyes as the three team up alongside Rip Hunter against Maxwell Lord. Everyone survives, but Ted Kord will not survive the saga. In Elseworld Season 2, the Monitor grows more nervous as the crisis draws nearer and so continues adding heroes to Justice Incarnate. Episode 1 is Earth 92 and titled Old Lady Harley, although it does end with the Monitor saying that she is not worth recruiting. Episode 2 is Earth 6 and titled Just Imagine, based on Stan Lee's reimagining of the Justice League and focusing on Leonard Lewis, aka the Green Lantern. Episode 3 is Earth 31 and based on All-Star Batman and Robin, but focusing primarily on how terrible this version of Batman is as his abuse pushes Dick Grayson into becoming the second Joker. Episode 4 is Earth 30 entitled Red Sun. Episode 5 is Earth 8 entitled Dr. Multiverse. Earth 8 is a pastiche of the Marvel Universe, with Dr. Multiverse being a pastiche of Captain Universe, but also kind of America Chavez, as she has the ability to locate and transport to any point in the multiverse. Episode 6 is Earth 120 entitled Red Death. Episode 7 is Earth 118 entitled The Dark Knights of Steel. Episode 8 is Earth 7 entitled Thunderer. Earth 7 in the comics is also a pastiche of Marvel, but this world will just be Thunderer and that's it. He's the only hero. In the two-part finale titled Justice Incarnate Parts 1 and 2, the Monitor comes across a peculiar universe void of heroes and finds a woman there named Lila Michaels, within whom he senses a great power, and so he recruits her to Justice Incarnate. Something about her, though, later revealed to be the Anti-Monitor, makes Dr. Chaos lose control of himself, causing him to attack Justice Incarnate, killing many of its members. In Part 2, the Monitor recruits many of the heroes from across the season to defeat Dr. Chaos, and they succeed. In Green Arrow Season 2, Roy returns to Star City just in time for Team Arrow to go international as they face off against Count Vertigo. Along the way, Roy meets, hooks up with, and impregnates Cheshire, while Oliver and Dinah kind of just get a little bit closer. And now we're up to the present day, or at least as of the making of this video. The next Marvel Project 2 counterpart is X-Men 97, although that series is not canon to the MCU. The DCEU counterpart will be, and it will be a Teen Titans animated series, with Season 1 bringing together a few of the recently introduced young heroes, including Robin, Impulse, and Wonder Girl, while introducing Mal Duncan, aka Guardian, as well as Bumblebee, as well as the newly created clone of Superman, Superboy, who in this version was created by Simon, who is the leader of Hive and the Fearsome Five, the villains of this season, and has nothing to do with Lex Luthor in this universe. While the Flash and Batman franchises will be continuing, Bart and Damian won't be appearing there, fully becoming Teen Titans characters. This lineup is a mix of pre-Crisis and Rebirth Teen Titans, but it is mostly actually inspired by Young Justice, although I like the title Teen Titans way more. There isn't really a counterpart to Deadpool and Wolverine, since there's no counterpart to the X-Men franchise. I didn't establish it, but also I didn't establish it because the DC Universe just doesn't have any team big enough that is also completely removed from the Justice League to be a counterpart to the X-Men. So instead of a new franchise, here we have New Gods Part 2, in which the war between New Genesis and Apokolips wages on on, as Mr. Miracle, Orion, and Big Barda, as well as the others, are joined by the Forever People who come together to create the Infinity Man. In this movie, Darkseid's elite attempt to and even succeed in resurrecting Darkseid, who kills Highfather before being killed himself yet again by Orion. In the end, Mr. Miracle becomes the new Highfather and Orion becomes ruler of Apokolips, seemingly beginning an era of peace for the new gods. Strange Adventures is a mini-series spin-off of Hulkworld that is based on Tom King's Strange Adventures, mostly focusing on what Adam Strange's life looks like without the Rann-Thanagar War, although this series will end with Adam's death and is completely standalone. Titans Season 3 is the final season of Titans and adds Tempest to the team. The season focuses on the Titans facing off against Brother Blood, who desperately wants to bring Trigon to Earth. Eventually he succeeds, as the Titans are faced with their greatest threat. In order to defeat him, Raven unleashes her true power. Every Titan survives this season and simply continues to operate without appearing for a little while. The Flash, The Fastest Man Alive Season 4 is the final season as well. In between seasons, Wally and Linda got married, and now Linda is giving birth. The process of giving birth to two speedsters, though, causes a rift in the multiverse as the baby's powers fritz out, bringing Linda, Wally, and their twins, now named Jay and Irie, to another universe. This alternate universe is Earth 27, which is the universe where time moves the fastest in the multiverse, so in that world, the present day is the 853rd century. While over there, Wally meets the Justice League of that Earth, and specifically the Flash, John Fox. The season then takes place over the course of 15 years, and in that time, Jay West becomes Surge, Irie West becomes Thunderheart, and the speedsters continuously face off against the Rogues Gallery of the 853rd century, including John Fox's archenemy, Savitar. Only after 15 years do they then manage, in the season finale, to get back to Earth 1, where they find out that only 3 years have passed. Just as they return to Earth 1, they're all then teleported away, implicitly confirming we're not going to be seeing them for 3 years. Rounding off this final season run is Elseworld Season 3, which starts with things going back to normal as the Monitor goes around the multiverse in search of recruits for Justice Incarnate. Episode 1 is Earth 14, entitled The Red Daughter of Krypton, showing a Supergirl who joined the Red Lantern Corps, which in the comics happened in the main universe. Here, it will only be an alternate universe. Episode 2 is Earth 43, entitled Red Rain, showing a vampire Batman. Episode 3 is Earth 99, entitled Dark Flash, showing a version of Wally named Walter and his life after Linda dies. Episode 4 is Earth 18, titled Justice Rider, with a Madam 44 being the main character. Episode 5 is Earth 17, entitled Atomic Knights of Justice, with Captain Adam Strange as the main character. Episode 6 is Earth 204, entitled Titans Tomorrow, focusing on Dark Raven. Episode 7 is Earth 48, entitled Lady Quark. Episode 8 is Earth X, entitled Freedom Fighters, focusing on the Ray. The last 2 episodes are then titled Crisis on Earth X Parts 1 and 2, and are a 2-part finale focusing first on the Monitor recruiting most of the heroes from the season to Justice Incarnate. Right as then, the crisis actually begins. The antimatter wave begins destroying several universes, but it should take a few years for it to destroy every universe. Justice Incarnate and the Freedom Fighters then team up to attempt to save Earth X, but they fail, and every single member of the Freedom Fighters die except for the Ray, who survives and joins Justice Incarnate. Then, after the events of this season, but then off-screen, they continue to do exactly this right up until we get to Crisis on Infinite Earths, which will be the big finale to this saga. Superman Truth and Justice is a one-off return to the Superman franchise and is based on What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, revealing that since we last saw them, Clark and Lois had John Kent, who's a little kid at this point. The main villains are the Elite, led by Manchester Black, with every member then being replaced by more memorable villains like Silver Banshee, Atomic Skull, and Livewire. The movie would have the same ending as Superman vs. the Elite, playing out very similarly. Like how the MCU is reviving Daredevil with Born Again, its DCEU counterpart will be revived as well with Constantine Hellblazer, which brings back Constantine and his supporting cast, as well as Swamp Thing, all while also introducing Zatanna, setting up Justice League Dark. This is technically a miniseries, but a season 2 kind of will exist with a Justice League Dark series. The Thunderbolts will be a semi-sequel to Black Widow, as it will feature a lot of the same characters, so I'll be replacing it with an actual sequel to its counterpart. Green Lantern Sinestro War showcases Sinestro creating a Lantern Corps of his own from within his prison after he was sent there in Justice League Legion of Doom. Make believe I said that in the original video, and it's in the Antimatter universe, and then his Lantern Corps is powered by Parallax. The Sinestro Corps starts a war with the recently expanded Green Lantern Corps, which recently also recruited Kyle Rayner. The Green Lanterns not being allowed to kill gives the Sinestro Corps such an advantage that it forces the Guardians to remove the rule, which is revealed to have been Sinestro's motivation, as he still believes in the Green Lantern Corps mission and just wanted to improve it just like in the comics. However, the Guardians rewriting the rules sets the Blackest Night into motion, as the Green Lanterns win their war against the Yellow Lanterns, taking heavy casualties, including major characters like Tomare, Kilowog, and even a human, Guy Gardner. At the end of this movie, Ganthet and another Guardian, Sade, are kicked out of the Guardians for falling in love with each other, so they go off to form their own corps, the Blue Lanterns. And a part of the way the Green Lanterns are able to defeat the Sinestro Corps is that they enlist the help of the Star Sapphires. This leaves just the Orange Lanterns, which is really just one character, and the Indigo Lanterns to appear, both of whom will have roles in the third and final Green Lantern movie. In Legion of Superheroes, Supergirl finds herself swept up into the far future by a mysterious figure later revealed to be the Time Trapper. In the 31st century, Supergirl finds a place that is more reminiscent of Krypton, and is surprised to find there are still superheroes, a team calling themselves the Legion of Superheroes, although they've only recently been founded and do not have many members. However, the big thing about this movie that it reveals is that Earth 1 does not actually have a future beyond 2027, and that Kara was actually brought to Earth 58, and that everyone else in the DCEU who is from the future is actually not from the future of Earth 1, but rather the present day of an alternate universe where time moves quicker. Booster Gold is from Earth 86, Impulse is from Earth 94, Thawne is from Earth 63, and Abracadabra is from Earth 62. This is a standalone movie that doesn't get a sequel due to there simply not being any room. Continuing the events of Elseworlds Season 1 Episode 4, Deceased, Dead Planet picks up 10 years later on Earth 55, depicting the post-apocalyptic world and the last remaining hope for humanity, focusing on the new trinity of Damian Wayne, John Kent, and Cassandra Sandsmark. This series is standalone. It's later confirmed that this world was destroyed by the antimatter wave. Bringing another franchise to an end is the final Dr. Fate movie, Dr. Fate Infinity Inc., which shows Dr. Fate's team expanding a bit, adding Stargirl, Hourman, Dr. Midnight, Wildcat, and Stripe, but no longer with Hawkman and Hawkgirl, as they team up against Eclipso. Kent Nelson dies in the end though, leaving Nobu to search for a replacement. And finally for Fate 6 is a Red Hood miniseries where he abandons his guns and develops a no-kill rule of his own. Jason teams up with Arsenal and Artemis as his newfound heroism is challenged when the worst of humanity is brought up to light in deranged serial killer Professor Pig. With Roy here, Leon Harper is revealed to have been born, and Cheshire appears as well. Phase 6 will begin with Green Arrow Season 3, the final season. In this season, Oliver and Dinah get married. Oliver is revealed to have a fully grown son named Connor Hawke, which is news to him, and the main villains are the Longbow Hunters, led by Prometheus, with other members Komodo, Red Dart, Ricardo Diaz, and Onomatopoeia. After 3 Batman movies that are actually Bat Family movies in a row, we are now returning to basics with the 5th and final Batman movie, and it's completely solo. In this movie, Tim Drake has cemented himself as the one and only Batman, and faces off against Clayface, Scarecrow, and the man they're working for, Hugo Strange. In this movie, titled Batman The Dark Knight, Tim further develops the Batman suit, adding the wings and foot rockets, fully becoming Batman Beyond. In Titan Season 2, Static is introduced and joins the team. Superboy develops more of his 90s looking personality, Bart Allen changes his superhero name to Kid Flash, and Guardian retires. The main villain is Dr. Light, who is significantly more powerful than the comics. Instead of another season of Constantine Hellblazer, there'll be another Justice League Dark miniseries with Felix Faust as the main villain, and ending with Deadman being allowed to move on to the next life. New Gods Part 3 brings the trilogy to an end, showing the New Gods era of peace being cut short as the power gets to Orion's head, while Part 2 is the big war between the 2 planets and is the most epic of the 3. Part 3 is a bit more personal, with it mostly being about the rivalry between Mr. Miracle and Orion, as well as the birth of Mr. Miracle and Big Barda's son, but in the end, the 2 worlds, New Genesis and Apokolips, are merged together cosmically and become Genesis Apokolips, with Scott and Orion co-ruling together, and that is the end of the New Gods trilogy. Finally, after having been missing for years, we have another Justice League movie with Justice League Syndicate, and this one features the Crime Syndicate as the main villain. On Earth 3, Owlman's quantum sequence Apokolips or whatever, uses an incredibly advanced algorithm to predict the universe's destruction that is imminent. Seeking to escape to a surviving universe with the rest of the crime syndicate, Owlman develops a machine that allows him to go to other universes, and so the crime syndicate invade Earth 1, where they find that the heroes of the world are relatively scattered around. In response to the crime syndicate's invasion, the Justice League reform, including returning members like Superman, Batman, who used to be Robin, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Green Arrow, Black Canary, Shazam, Booster Gold, both Blue Beetles, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, who used to be Aqualad, Martian Manhunter, and the Atom, as well as new recruits from the Netflix shows Firestorm, Black Lightning, and Vixen. As for Firestorm, Martin Stein is revealed to have died, and he was replaced by Jason Rush. Ted Kord is killed by the crime syndicate. The third act sees the Justice League pushing the crime syndicate back to Earth 3. A final battle then ensues between the two teams, but it's interrupted by the antimatter wave coming for Earth 3. For this instance, the Justice League and crime syndicate put their differences aside to destroy the wave, but every Earth 1 hero is forcibly beamed away as Earth 3 and the crime syndicate are destroyed. After Justice League Syndicate, we only have 2 more projects before the finale, and the first of which is the second to last movie in the saga and explains why there were no Green Lanterns on the Justice League in the Justice League movie. Starting off the final year of the saga is Green Lantern Blackest Night, the final Green Lantern movie. This movie relatively faithfully adapts the original comic just without any outside DC franchises. Necron uses Black Hand, who appeared briefly in part 1, as his backstory and history with Green Lantern are shown here, as an avatar to create the Black Lantern Corps, resurrecting people on Earth and deceased Green Lanterns while the League are on Earth 3, so it happens around the same time. John and Kyle have larger roles, but it's Hal who is the main character, and that's true for the entire trilogy. In this movie, Hal recruits the leaders of every Lantern Corps in the emotional spectrum, and they all team up against the Black Lantern Corps. Still, they're overpowered, and they're only able to win when the Life Entity comes into play and the White Lantern Corps is created. Even still, Hal Jordan dies to stop the Black Lanterns. However, an end credit scene shows Hal's soul being approached by a man calling himself the Spectre. Similar to how Oliver Queen became the Spectre in the Arrowverse, here it will be Hal Jordan, because Hal Jordan actually did become the Spectre in the comics at one point. The final season of TV in this saga is Teen Titans Season 3, which delves deep into the multiverse aspect of the saga, and this season also takes place the same time as Justice League Syndicate. During a fight with a villain named Warp, Bart Allen's powers start to interact strangely with his, creating a small blast that brings all of the Teen Titans to an alternate universe where they discover only one hero exists, Superboy, but not Connor Kent or John Kent, rather Clark Kent. They spend a few episodes teaming up with Superboy against a few villains while trying to get back to their Earth. A conspiracy begins, however, where they find out there did used to be other heroes, eventually finding out that Superboy wanted to be the world's only hero, so he killed all of the rest. The Titans take a stand against Superboy Prime, who proves to be powerful enough to fight all of them, and in the end he even kills Superboy before dying himself. The Teen Titans are then brought to the Monitor ship. Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 finally brings together the entire saga, opening with Kelmosa, who would later be known as Pariah, viewing the dawn of time, creating an antimatter universe. In doing so, he then spends years being transported from universe to universe to view their destruction. Now known as Pariah, the latest universe he's sent to is Earth 3, where he witnesses the Justice League being sent away before Earth 3 is destroyed. Immediately after the events of Justice League Syndicate, the Justice League find themselves on the Monitor ship, where they find out that every hero from their world and heroes from many other worlds were brought there as well, including Earths 2, 5, 58, 89, 90, and 96, the only remaining universes in the multiverse, as well as all of the members of Justice Incarnate, all of whom's worlds have already been destroyed. They then learn of the crisis and that Earth 3 has been destroyed. The heroes then build the quantum towers on these remaining worlds, which manage to stop the antimatter waves. The towers are attacked by shadow demons, which successfully destroy the towers of Earths 5, 58, 89, 90, and 96. The heroes tried to fight back each time, but the shadow demons proved too powerful, or rather too numerous. Many heroes died, but most were returned to the Monitor ship each time. While all this is happening, a side plot focuses on Hal Jordan being slowly turned into the new Spectre by Jim Corrigan. As the same situation comes for Earth 2, the Monitor learns of his antimatter universe counterpart, as he is attacked by Harbinger, who has been taken over by the Anti-Monitor, and it's revealed that she had Anti-Monitor energy in her, which is what caused Dr. Chaos to lose his mind. Using Harbinger, the Anti-Monitor kills the Monitor as the Shadow Demons destroy the Tower of Earth 2, the second to last universe in the multiverse. Now only Earth 1 remains, and the heroes are approached by Hal Jordan, aka the Spectre, who tells them that their effort is pointless. The only way to win is to allow the multiverse to die. The heroes retreat to the Monitor ship as they are forced to watch inside a ship protected by the Spectre's power as Earth 1 is left absolutely defenseless. And finally, the saga is brought to an end with Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2, with 0 projects releasing between the 2 parts, and this final part is the only movie and only project to release in the final year of the DCEU, which is also why I ended most franchises 2 or 3 years before these movies, because these 2 movies would be huge undertakings that would include every single franchise in the saga and would take years to make, so every actor, every person working on every project would have to be available. Part 2 begins with nothing because the multiverse has ended. However, the antimatter wave was meant to end everything, turning the multiverse into the antimatter multiverse. However, the remaining matter in the form of the Monitor ship and the people on it caused a chain reaction that ignited a new universe. Now at the dawn of time of this new universe, the survivors, enhanced by the Spectre's power, which is God's power, take one final stand against the Anti-Monitor. The battle is rough and brutal, many heroes lose their lives, but it ends with Supergirl's death as she takes down the Anti-Monitor, allowing for the universe to ignite uninterrupted. As the Big Bang erupts, every remaining character is rocketed back to the time period they came from in a new world. Back in the present day, however, the Anti-Monitor has recovered thanks to a powerful armor and goes right back to his mission, as if nothing's changed. This time around though, the heroes are ready and take one actual final stand against the Anti-Monitor and destroy him, although a few major heroes like Green Arrow and even Superman die along the way. It's revealed that elements from the Earths of every single person present at the dawn of time were merged into the new world, mostly heroes from the future, but the history up until 2027 is almost entirely the same as Earth 1, and now the multiverse has been restored as well. This serves as the finale to the DCEU, ending on an epilogue 10 years later, time jump. John Kent, who is now around 17 years old, becomes Superman, Connor Hawke becomes Green Arrow, Damian Wayne becomes Batman, and much more as the DCEU lives on, just not on screen. This is the end of the DCEU, and this is the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching.